Hi, it's Ginger and welcome back to my channel, The Copycat Quilter. Today I'm showing you how you can copy a sweet little quilt that looks like it has spinning stars. It's a very simple block and a very simple quilt to make, but it's the arrangement of those blocks that create the effect of these spinning star patterns. I'm calling it a sweet little quilt because I made it with some bright pastels that were left over from another project. But if you made this in bold contrast and bright colors, it could really be striking and dramatic. So let me show you how you can copy this quilt too.
Let's take a look at this Spinning Stars quilt and break it down. If I look in the top left corner, I can see a unit here. This is a rectangle with a triangle in the corner, probably a snowball. But then if I look beside it, this is the same shape, and this is the same shape, and this one. So as I look around, they're basically all those same shapes like that, a rectangle with a triangle corner. I can see that this block is really like a four patch with two of those chisel shapes in each block. So this is one section, and then the next two go sideways. These here are sideways, and these are up and down. So this is a super simple quilt. It's a rectangle with a corner. I have some 2.5 by 4.5 inch strips from my potato chip bin. That just happens to be the same size as the potato chip blocks take. I've cut some 2.5 inch squares, and I'm going to lay them on the corners that way. This is pretty standard stitch and flip to make your corners, to do your snowball corners. I'm going to take my ruler and this is a friction pin, so it will come out when you iron. That's all that's necessary for these blocks. So I have a 4.5 by 2.5 inch rectangle and a 2.5 inch square, and I will start sewing those together. So this is what I'll be using for my quilt. I have these chisel pieces left over from a temperature quilt that I made for my grandson, his first year, and they are actually cut at 4.5 inches. And then I have the triangle pieces that go with it. So this is called the chisel piece. And then this is piece number 5 from the cubes. This happens to be from the 8 inch cube. I have 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangle, but because I did it on the Accuquilt, the corner's already cut off, and I'll sew those on. So they will end up like these once you sew along that line and trim. One thing, it's nice I'll be working with solids, but you need to be sure that your triangles are all going the same direction. So if I sew triangles this way and that way, it's not going to work. I need to make sure that whenever I'm sewing on my triangles, all of them are sewing onto, I'll say, the top right corner. Because in the layout that we have, they all need to be facing the same direction. I went through my stash of chisels and found the colors that I wanted to use for this quilt. And I decided for this one I would use the pastel blues and the mint greens, but not this really kind of acid green. That's not for this quilt. So I went through and picked out several colors of what I would like. I'm going to lay them out in front of my sewing machine, angled like this, so that whenever I go to pick it up to sew, I know to sew the seam that direction. That'll help prevent from getting some that are sewn to where they fold out to the right and others sewn to where they fold out to the left. If I do that, my pattern won't work. So I'll just lay them in front of my machine the way I need them sewn and pick them up one at a time in chain piece. You can do the same thing with the square. You would lay your rectangle on this side and lay your square here and pick them up and piece them together so that you're always sewing either that direction or that direction. It doesn't matter which way as long as you sew all of them the same way. I have to show you my new little toy. I won this little handy Aliso mini project iron at the G's Bend retreat. I was so excited, and they actually shipped it home because the retreat was in Mississippi and I live in Pennsylvania. But this has been great. It has a little silicone tray that comes with it that you sit the iron on so it holds it up off the surface. And whenever you're transporting it, it has a side for you to store it that fits flush up against the little ceramic plate. This is a really nice little iron. It does do steam. I don't put water in mine. I'll keep a little spritzer bottle if I want to do that, but it's nice to have it just right here on my sewing table beside my machine to do quick little presses. I know on one episode I said that I prefer to get up and walk across the room to my ironing board so that I get some steps, and then I won this little thing where I can build a nest around my sewing machine. So I'm just using it for now, still keeping my other iron hot across the room because for bigger things I'd prefer to get up and go press on that. And I also won the little pressing mat with it. I have two stacked here to make sure it's up off of my table good to not heat up the laminate table. I did win another mat for it, so I felt pretty excited about that. And a cool little carry case for it even, that is a wool felted carry case that you can put it in to take it to retreats or whatever. So that'll be fun whenever I do travel and don't want to carry my big size iron. So you can see I sewed the triangles to the correct sides. If you had sewn by the squares now, you would come cut 1/4 of an inch or so away from your seams and your pieces would look just like this. So let me press these out. I am breaking one of those quilting rules and I'm pressing over to the light side just because it's easier for me whenever I iron to put this down and slide than to try to have this down and slide that way. And with these colors, I looked, I don't think there's going to be any show through, but you can press it the other way if you want to. It's okay that they all press the same direction because they're not meeting at those points like that. So I'll press these open. I'll make a few hundred more, it seems like, and I will come back and show you how to assemble them. So I have 4 pairs sewn together, and it's important when you go to sew these units together that you put them where the long side of the colors are matching. You want those triangles pointing out different directions. If you sew it like this or like this, you won't be able to get the layout that we had in the quilt. So make sure to sew the long ends of the colors together with the triangles pointing opposite directions. Here are my 4 units that I've sewn together, and I'll show you whenever we do the layout. I'm putting it into rows and columns, but the way that you do the layout is, for me, the easiest thing was to make sure I have a diamond or a square on point in the middle of my triangles. If you get that right to where there is a square in the center like this of the triangles, then it's going to be right. And when you lay it to the next piece, it's going to form a square here, and that gives you that overall spinning effect. I'm going to sew these into units and make my rows, and this quilt will come together just like that. I've sewn my 2 block units into rows, and you can see the triangles meeting this way across the row. I'm going to go lay these out on the big table and get them sewn together. Here I've put the rows on my design wall, and I've laid them out so that I can be sure that I put them in order and get those squares on point arranged in the middle of each pinwheel. And now I'm sewing the rows together 2 at a time. So the top 2 are together, the next 2 rows, and so on. And now all the rows are sewed together. That really came together quickly, and laying it on the design board helped me make sure that I got those triangles in the right places.
So I hope you like that. I did learn one thing. On the little blue quilt that I demonstrated, the stars aren't nearly as prominent as on the other quilt where the stars are primarily that orange color or peach color. I think I'm going to try to make it again where every block has one consistent colored rectangle that I can move to the center so that I get that spinning star effect even broader. And this time I used colors that were a little softer besides each other, and maybe I'll make the 2 rectangles a little higher contrast, but still a contrast from those triangles. But I still love it. My quilt ended up being 25 by 30-ish, which is a size that my charity donates to a local NICU. I may even have to trim a little off of the quilt to make it fit. So those last rows may not be exactly the same size they would be if it was a complete block, but I don't think the babies in the NICU or their parents are going to notice that. And I'm really excited to have 2 more quilts to donate. So I hope you stick around and that you like, subscribe, maybe hit that notify bell, but definitely put some comments below. I tried a little different format with this video where I'm not filming the sewing machine so much, because I think that part you can see how things are going, but I did try to describe if there are things you should watch out for when you're sewing. So let me know in the comments if you like that format, if you like the longer videos where I do a lot more sewing and talk about what I'm sewing, or if you like the little shorter videos for things like these that are really simple block and it just turns into the block placement that really makes a difference in the quilt. So until next time, I hope you enjoy your sewing and I hope you come back to see more.